Hundreds of thousands of Americans go off grid awaiting what's coming. As our society descends into chaos, huge numbers of people are choosing to pull the plug and walk away. Of course, it's nearly impossible to completely escape the ubiquitous madness that's seemingly all around us, but many are finding that an off the grid lifestyle gives them the best opportunity to isolate themselves as much as possible. And when you depend less on the system, what happens in the system has less impact on you. Think Amish, for example. Unfortunately, it appears that our system is headed for total collapse, and a significant portion of the population is feverishly preparing in anticipation of what is coming. And according to Reuters, it's been estimated that there are now about 20 million preppers in the United States. Brooke Morgan surveyed booths at the Survival and Prepper Show in Colorado that were stocked with boxes of ammo, stacks of medical injury kits, and every type of knife imaginable. A self-described 30-year-old from Indiana, Morgan is among young Americans prepping to survive political upheaval and natural disasters, a pursuit until recently largely associated with far-right movements such as white nationalists since the 1980s. Researchers say the number of concoctions has doubled in size to about 20 million since 2017. There is a subset of this group who have decided that the best way to prepare is to go off the grid, quote unquote. It's reported that more than 250,000 people in the US have chosen to adopt such a lifestyle. As energy costs and home prices continue to rise, more Americans are choosing to live off the grid. I mean, can you imagine going into the woods and, buying yourself a lot and building your own log cabin with your stone fireplace? So, as energy costs and home prices continue to rise, more Americans are choosing to live off the grid. And according to one estimate, more than 250,000 people in the U.S. live off-grid lifestyle, while the potential cost savings are certainly appealing. The technology and interest in tiny homes, container homes, and other energy-efficient housing alternatives are allowing families interested in sustainable living to transition to off-grid living. And if you're thinking of making a similar move, you need to do your research. Most of us are extremely dependent on the network, and many find the transition to a radically different lifestyle quite difficult. Living off the grid means committing to getting everything you need to survive and thrive independently: food, shelter, energy, and most importantly, water. It's empowering until things don't work out, like when you're halfway through a nice hot shower in the end of a January day and the water pump suddenly stops working, sending you into the freezing dark with a wet head of shampoo and a few tools to deal with the problem. For many people, joining a community of others who have adopted an off-grid lifestyle is very helpful. For example, about 55 miles south of Salt Lake City, hundreds of survivors live in a very large community that's completely off the grid. A community of Americans who shun society have created a survivalist refuge in the Utah desert after finding themselves alienated from the modern world. Hundreds of people have prepared to live off the land as part of Operation Self-Reliance, feeling that going off the grid is a solution to a crumbling culture. This particular community was originally founded by a 74-year-old man named Philip Gleason, and warns that a variety of apocalyptic scenarios could play out in the coming years. Gleason said he fears a variety of apocalyptic scenarios could play out in the coming years, from a power grid failure that shuts down Americans' electricity to nuclear war and cyber attacks. And this is just history repeating itself, he warned. At the beginning of any cultural revolution, the people who control their food are the ones who come out on top. As Americans consistently share that they are losing faith in the nation's institutions, those who have made a new life at Riverbed Ranch have effectively created their own self-surviving nation. Of course, it probably was not a good idea for them to share what they were doing with such a large audience, because if things get really bad, large numbers of desperate people may start heading out that way. More often than not, families who choose to live an off-grid lifestyle are simply doing it alone. Heather Greaser and her husband once had a big house near Denver, but now they're much happier living an off-the-grid lifestyle. 10 years ago, I was living a typical suburban life on the outskirts of Denver. My husband Casey and I were both teachers. We lived in a 4-bedroom house with a small yard where our 2 children loved to play. Today, our life looks radically different. We live completely off the grid in a 300 square foot house we built out of straw bales and cobs, a natural building material made from soil, water, and other organic matter. There are, by the way, YouTube videos that you can see how beautiful and easy it is to make such houses. A natural material made from soil, water, and other organic matter. We rely on solar energy for electricity and rain harvesting for water, and use a drip toilet to create humanity, composting human waste. We left the conventional world behind, but along the way we created a much more luxurious and free lifestyle than the one we lived in the suburbs, she said. So good for them. These days it's getting harder and harder to live a normal middle-class lifestyle because the cost of housing has become so painful. In fact, a whole new category known as hardly unaffordable, quote unquote, has been created because housing prices have become so expensive in some cities. Anyone who has kept an eye on the housing market for the past 2 decades will know that in many countries, most notably the United States, it has become much more difficult to buy a home. But a new report sums up the feeling of many potential home buyers by creating a category labeling some major cities as incredibly unaffordable. The report compared median incomes to median house prices. It found that demand for homes with outdoor space due to the pandemic, land use policies aimed at curbing urban sprawl, and investors piling into the markets had sent prices skyrocketing. Living off the grid is often much cheaper than living a conventional lifestyle. And living off the grid will also give you a much better chance of protecting yourself from the endless violence we see all around us. Recently, I was deeply shocked to read about a 42-year-old man who fired shots at others. This was in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Now, the violent attack took place in Rochester Hills, Michigan, 5 p.m. Saturday. Can you imagine? Now, you have to be completely and utterly evil to do something like this. Unfortunately, our entire society, is saturated with evil at this point. So I can definitely understand why so many people just want to get away from it all. Things are very bad now, but they will get much worse during chaotic years ahead. Ultimately, I believe a large number of people will regret not adopting an off-grid lifestyle while they still have the chance to do so. Our society is already collapsing all around us, and those who understand what it means and understand what's happening are preparing for what is coming. And this is from Michael Snyder on The Most Important News. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. This is by Michael Snyder. About the author, Michael Snyder's extremely controversial new book entitled Chaos is available in paperback and for Kindle on Amazon. He's also written 7 other books that are available on Amazon, including End Times, 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophets and the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters. When you purchase any of Michael's books, you help to support the work he's doing. You can also get his articles by email as soon as he publishes them by subscribing to his Substack newsletter. Michael has published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and The Most Important News. And he always freely and happily allows others to republish those articles on their own websites. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, we strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.